All right, so this is part three of natural selection, and the main focus of these notes are the four parts of evolution by natural selection. And what you see there is the 13 species of Galapagos finches, and we kind of already mentioned how that really illustrates natural selection and Darwin's theory. So four parts start with overproduction, right? So organisms produce more offspring than can survive, and it says leads to competition for resources. And a couple of examples I gave you there. It says fish lay thousands of eggs. Only a few live. Most die when they are eaten as prey. So you're ensuring, if you're that organism, you're ensuring that at least a few make it. The same thing on the right side. That's frog eggs and potential tadpoles, and it just talks about overproduction there. So a couple of examples of aquatic organisms that overproduce, but you see that in nature, even if it's a large organism that has twins and only one survive, that's still considered overproduction. So that leads to competition among offspring for food, space, and other resources. That's where the whole idea behind survival of the fittest comes in. Do you have what it takes to survive if that environment changes, if something goes bad, if you have a lack of food or water, that kind of thing? Two is genetic variation. There are variations among the offspring of organisms caused by genetic differences. And I gave you a couple of examples here. Giraffe, believe it or not, there are at least that many color variations in giraffes that are found in Africa. And it just depends on what part of Africa you're seeing them in. It's all regional, but they're the same species. So you have variation there. And that's the same species of ladybug on that one side with all the color variations that occur. Selection is part three. It says individuals with certain traits are better suited for survival. These are the traits that will be selected. Right? So that's why it's called that. So what is actually being selected for? And I took a little passage from the book. It says individuals try to get the resources they need to survive, like we just talked about. Food, water, space, a mate, that kind of thing. Remember that selection works only on traits that exist in a population. Individuals with a helpful trait are more likely to survive to reproduce. As a result, the trait is selected for becoming more common in the next generation. So that's how it works. And that's an obvious one with the giraffes there too. Okay, so which trait do you think got selected for? If you're talking about giraffes being successful at the tallest branches there, right? It's fairly obvious. And then finally, it's adaptations. So the useful traits are the adaptations. And adaptations can only happen if there's a variety within the offspring of the species. So when you have that variation, that leads to adaptations. The picture on the left says individuals with beneficial adaptations are more likely to survive to pass on their genes. We're talking about the butterflies here with two color variations. So even the caterpillars are colored differently, and the more brownish looking caterpillars are blending in with the bark, and the one that stands out is the more colorful one. Those are more likely to get eaten by those birds. And then you see the butterflies as adults. It says over many generations there is a change in allele frequency, right? And that's evolution. That's how it works. So remember what an allele is. It's a form of the gene. So one form of the gene was for brown butterflies. The other form was for the yellow butterflies. The less yellow butterflies make it to adulthood to reproduce, the less alleles you're going to see in the gene pool. So those alleles for brown butterflies are increasing because of that, right? They're going to get eaten less frequently, and so that the allele frequency goes up for brown, down for yellow. And genetic variation is the normal differences that exist among the genes of individuals of the same species. And I'm just giving you a few examples here. Of course, humans, you can just look around everywhere. We're so varied in our traits and how we look, and you can see definite variation within our species. With other species, it's not quite as easy, but you do see it. There's ladybugs again, a lot of different color variations in the same species. Of course, with domestic dogs, that's a tremendous amount of variation too, but just within one breed, right? The poodle right there. So you see a bunch of different color variations. And then there's some more butterflies on that side, and those are all the same species with color variation. Variation can be caused by mutations or random changes in genes, and they can be helpful or harmful depending on what's going on in the environment, right? So those butterflies that you see on the right side, they are all kind of toxic and somewhat poisonous, and so if a bird was to try and eat one, they usually kind of spit it out right away because it doesn't taste good, and then they remember, because those are very kind of starkly colored butterflies. They remember, I'm not going to try and eat that one again. It did not taste good. That did not go well. So that didn't work so well for that one individual butterfly, but for the species, that's working really well, right? So that coloration. The ones on the left are all butterflies that don't actually taste bad and are not toxic in any way, but they have evolved to kind of look like the ones that are. And so that birds tend to leave them alone also because they look so similar. That's called mimicry. That's a form of camouflage too, but it's a successful adaptation, and that's a random kind of mutation that helped that organism, and a slow change that allowed it to start to look like that toxic species, and it works. If it didn't work, they wouldn't look like that. Here's one we've seen already, right? Both those mutations, the dark and the light-colored moth, worked at one time or another, right? So, but the darker mutation, that was kind of a harmful mutation for that particular organism because it was getting eaten more often. But then after the Industrial Revolution, the one that became more harmful was the white one. And so more of those got eaten, the population shifted. Here's one that you might think, oh, those mutations are all harmful for that animal. It looks goofy, the long ears and long snout and the weird colored tail, and that animal looks the way it does because it helps it survive. That is a marsupial, right? Distantly related to kangaroos and possums and those kinds of things that have a pouch, found in Australia and the Australian outback, where it's extremely hot and dry, very harsh conditions, and that organism survives because of the way it looks. All those things, the snout, the ears, the tail, all that stuff is there for a reason. It helps that organism survive. And you probably have heard this name before, but you probably didn't know what that was, and that is a bandicoot. Like the tracks, bandicoot. All right, so the next thing is selective breeding or artificial selection. So we've gone into natural selection. This is artificial selection, and that's the process of man breeding plants and animals for particular genetic traits. We do it all the time for different reasons, and a couple of examples that you see there is for our own consumption, for our own food, right? Artificial selection is most often seen with domestic animals like cats and dogs, which are bred for specific traits such as size, health, looks, fur type, or their specialized job. I've got examples of dogs there, and by the way, every dog breed, whether it's Chihuahua or Great Dane or any of them in between there, all derived from the same species of wolf. Fish, like goldfish, that particular organism has been bred to look like that for people to have as pets. The same with domestic cats, although cats haven't been domesticated as long as dogs have, and they tend to not be as easily domesticated because they're not as social as dogs. Dogs want to be a part of the pack, so it was easy to domesticate dogs compared to cats. And then domestic pigs, right? And that was mostly for consumption, but It says artificial selection is also common in organisms used for consumption, such as cattle, chicken, pigs, fruits, and vegetables. So all those things, man has controlled the breeding of those animals and the plants, and we've got it down to a science for maximum production, largest fruits, sweetest fruits, largest vegetables, most disease resistant, all these things, the biggest cows that produce the most milk, all that is due to man's artificial selection and selective breeding of these organisms for generations, for really hundreds of years. Traits that are favorable in these organisms include growth rate and survival rate, disease resistance, and quality of the meat, the egg, the flesh. All that stuff is important because it's a money making thing. So farmers want to make money. Stores like HEB, the Walmart and Kroger and Sam's and all those, they want to make money, so they want to get the best quality products they can because people that go to the stores want the best quality products and they're going to pay money for it. So it's an industry, and universities have dedicated uh, a big part of their curriculum to improving these things. A&M is one of those. There's been so many um, breakthrough, cutting edge types of animal, ag, science, and raising crops, all that kind of thing has come out of that university, have come out of that university and have made things more disease resistant and grow better and taste better and all that kind of stuff that people want in their fruits and vegetables and their meat, eggs, all that stuff. I thought I'd give you a couple of examples of some selective breeding that produced some some of the dog breeds that we know. Maybe you don't know this one as well, Corgi, but you know, Border Collie. You've probably seen one of those. Schipperke, maybe not. They're not quite as common, but that's an Australian. Um, that was an Australian breed. Both those, and they mate those together to make the Corgi. Now, Corgi's an established breed now, but it came from those two. Here's some that are real popular now. Expensive dogs. Labradoodle's one of them. You maybe even have one. You know, Labrador Retriever, of course, with the poodle, and you get the Labradoodle. And then here's the other one, the Golden Doodle, extremely popular with the Golden Retriever, of course, the poodle again, and you get the Golden Doodle. And expensive, popular dogs these days, but they're cool.